Imagine this. Every night, just before you go to bed, you take a spoonful of olive oil. It sounds almost too simple to matter. No powders, no pills, no expensive supplement, just a golden oil that has lived in kitchens for thousands of years. But the human body is not fooled by something being simple. Your body responds to what you give it, and olive oil is not just any oil. It is a complex food with monounsaturated fats and, especially in extra virgin form, natural polyphenols and antioxidants that have been linked to heart and metabolic benefits. The real question is not whether olive oil is healthy in general. The real question is what actually happens when you make it a nightly habit before bed, and whether that bedtime ritual is truly helpful or just another internet trend dressed up as wisdom. To understand this clearly, we have to separate the fantasy from the science. Olive oil does have a strong health reputation, and that reputation is not random. Major health organizations and major medical institutions describe olive oil as a source of unsaturated fat, and they note that when unsaturated fats are used in place of saturated fats, they may help improve blood cholesterol. Extra virgin olive oil is also highlighted for its polyphenols, which are one reason it may be more than just a basic cooking fat. But none of that automatically means that taking it straight before bed creates some special overnight miracle. The strongest evidence is for olive oil as part of an overall diet, not as a magic bedtime shot. And that is where the story becomes interesting. In large observational studies, higher olive oil intake has been associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and lower risk of death from several causes. One Harvard summary reported that people with the highest olive oil intake had a lower risk of dying from any cause over a long follow-up period. An American Heart Association coverage of a large study reported lower cardiovascular risk with more than half a tablespoon a day. Those numbers do not prove that olive oil alone caused the benefit, but they do tell us something important. Olive oil is not just a trendy dressing. It fits into a pattern of eating that has repeatedly been linked with better long-term health. Now, if you drink olive oil every night before bed, the first thing your body may notice is the fat itself. Fat is not the enemy. In the right context, fat helps the body absorb fat-soluble nutrients and can support a more balanced meal pattern when it replaces less healthy fats. That is one reason the Mediterranean-style way of eating keeps coming up in the science. Olive oil is a major source of unsaturated fat in that dietary pattern, and replacing butter or other saturated fats with unsaturated fats is associated with lower LDL cholesterol. So the bedtime ritual is not really about drinking oil as much as it is about whether olive oil is displacing something worse in your day. If it is replacing fried snacks, heavy late-night desserts, or butter-heavy foods, that is one story. If it is simply being added on top of everything else, that is another story entirely. Let us talk about the heart, because that is where olive oil's reputation is strongest. The American Heart Association and other major health sources consistently frame olive oil as a heart-friendly fat, especially when it takes the place of saturated fat. Extra virgin olive oil also contains compounds that may help reduce inflammation, which matters because inflammation is one of the background processes involved in a lot of chronic disease. In practical terms, the body likes fats that are more unsaturated and less saturated, and olive oil is a classic example of that. So if a person uses a modest amount of olive oil consistently, especially as part of a Mediterranean-style pattern, the long-term direction of the evidence points toward cardiovascular support. Not because olive oil is magical, but because it improves the quality of the fat in the diet. That said, one of the biggest mistakes people make is thinking the timing matters more than the total pattern. Drinking olive oil before bed is not what the evidence was built on. The evidence was built on daily intake, meal replacement, and dietary patterns over time. So if somebody asks, what happens if I drink olive oil every night before bed? The honest answer is this. The real benefit likely comes from the olive oil itself and from what it replaces, not from the clock reading on the wall. Nighttime is not a special biochemical portal where olive oil turns into medicine. Consistency matters far more than the hour. There is also a very important difference between adding olive oil to food and swallowing it as a straight shot. When you drink it by itself, you are treating it more like a supplement, but olive oil behaves best as a food. Health experts have pointed out that the benefits are usually stronger when olive oil is used in meals rather than taken alone, and that isolated shots can be harder on the stomach for some people. That means the most powerful version of olive oil is often the least dramatic version. Drizzle it over vegetables, mix it into a salad, use it in place of butter, or add it to a meal that already contains fiber and protein. The body usually understands food better than it understands a wellness gimmick. For some people, a small amount of olive oil before bed may feel soothing simply because fat can be satisfying. It may fit better than a late-night snack loaded with sugar or refined flour. But let us be careful here. That is not the same as proving olive oil improves sleep. Olive oil is not a sleeping pill, and there is no strong evidence that it knocks you out or changes sleep architecture in any dramatic way. What it can do is support a more stable eating pattern if it replaces a worse habit. Sometimes the benefit is indirect. A person stops raiding the pantry at midnight. A person feels less compelled to eat a heavy dessert. A person chooses a calmer, simpler routine. That is not Hollywood-level medicine, but in the real world, small changes add up. Now let us talk about digestion, because this is where the bedtime trend gets both praise and criticism. Some people say olive oil helps them feel less bloated or more regular, but those claims are not the same as strong clinical proof. What we do know is that drinking oil straight can cause digestive upset in some people. Nausea, cramping, diarrhea, or a heavy feeling can happen, especially if the amount is large or the stomach is sensitive. So if a person says olive oil before bed helps them, that is possible for that individual. But if another person says it feels uncomfortable, that is also completely believable. The digestive system is not one size fits all, and a healthy food can still be a bad personal fit in the wrong form. That is one reason I would never present olive oil as something everybody should drink straight at night. There is a huge difference between using a reasonable amount with meals and taking a full spoonful or two as a shot before sleep. Olive oil is calorie dense, and all fats are calorie dense. If you add it on top of your current eating habits, you may simply be adding energy the body does not need. The British Heart Foundation and Mayo Clinic both emphasize that healthy eating is about the entire pattern, not reliance on a single food. So yes, olive oil can be a healthy fat. No, it does not get a free pass to ignore portion size. Moderation is not weakness. Moderation is how the science stays honest. That brings us to weight management, because this is another place where people often overpromise. Some online claims make olive oil sound like a secret fat loss trick. The truth is more grounded. Olive oil may support healthier eating when it replaces less healthy fats, but if you pour it into your routine without reducing something else, the extra calories can matter. The better story is substitution, not addition. Use olive oil instead of butter in some meals. Use it instead of heavy, creamy dressings. Use it instead of repeatedly frying foods in less healthy fats. That is how a heart-friendly oil becomes part of a healthier body composition story over time. Olive oil supports the diet. It does not cancel out the diet. The quality of the olive oil also matters. Extra virgin olive oil is usually the most prized form because it is less refined and contains more of the compounds people talk about when they discuss polyphenols and antioxidants. Harvard has noted that extra virgin olive oil may contain substances that provide extra benefits beyond regular olive oil, although the evidence has been described as still developing. Mayo Clinic sources also point out that extra virgin olive oil is a major source of unsaturated fat in the Mediterranean diet. In plain language, if you are choosing olive oil for health reasons, extra virgin is usually the version most people mean when they talk about the better end of the spectrum. Freshness matters too. Olive oil is not only about the label. The best health-promoting oils tend to be the ones handled well, stored well, and used reasonably quickly after opening. Light and heat are not friends of delicate oils. That is why people often prefer dark bottles and proper storage. If you are bringing olive oil into a nightly habit, you want the oil to be worth drinking in the first place. Otherwise, you are turning a potentially helpful food into a tired, oxidized version of itself. A healthy ritual still deserves a healthy ingredient. Now let us look at the bigger picture of inflammation. Olive oil often gets described as anti-inflammatory, and while that phrase can be overused, there is a real scientific basis for it. The fats and minor compounds in olive oil are part of why it appears in dietary patterns associated with better cardiovascular outcomes. Inflammation is not some abstract word. It is one of the processes that quietly influences blood vessels, metabolic health, and aging over time. Olive oil will not erase inflammation by itself, but it can be one piece of a broader anti-inflammatory way of eating built around plants, fish, legumes, nuts, and less processed food. When olive oil is used that way, it becomes part of a lifestyle that supports the body instead of stressing it. People also ask whether olive oil can help the brain. The honest answer is that the strongest evidence is still broader than any one bedtime habit, but the long-term associations are encouraging. Harvard's summary of a large cohort linked higher olive oil intake with lower risk of death from neurodegenerative disease, and that is part of why olive oil has attracted so much attention in longevity conversations. Again, this is observational evidence, not a guarantee, but it fits a pattern. Diets rich in unsaturated fats and plant-based foods often show up near better long-term brain and cardiovascular outcomes. So if you hear olive oil mentioned in the same conversation as healthy aging, that is not an accident. It reflects the fact that the brain, like the heart, likes a body with fewer inflammatory pressures and better fat quality. At the same time, I want to be very careful not to oversell this. Drinking olive oil before bed will not suddenly sharpen memory by sunrise. It will not erase disease risk. It will not undo years of poor sleep, high sugar intake, smoking, or inactivity. That is where so many health trends go wrong. They promise a dramatic overnight transformation from a single habit. Real biology is less glamorous than that. Real biology is cumulative. The reason olive oil keeps appearing in the science is not that it is a miracle, but that it consistently shows up in healthier dietary patterns. That is a much more believable story, and in the long run, believable stories are the ones that survive. So what should a sensible person do with this information? First, stop thinking of olive oil as a cure and start thinking of it as a better fat. Second, stop thinking that more is automatically better. Third, stop assuming the bedtime timing is what creates the benefit. If a small amount of olive oil at night helps someone avoid junk food, fine. If it makes someone nauseous, heavy, or reflux prone, then it is probably not the right bedtime ritual for them. The healthiest routine is the one that the body tolerates and the person can sustain. Science is not asking you to be extreme. Science is asking you to be consistent. Let us also clear up a common myth. Olive oil does not detox the body. Your liver and kidneys already do that job. Olive oil can be part of a healthy diet, and a healthier diet can make the body function better, but that is not the same thing as flushing toxins out with oil. Wellness marketing loves to turn ordinary foods into magical cleaners. Biology is more respectful than that. Biology prefers nourishment, balance, and repeated good choices. If olive oil helps you choose a healthier late-night routine, great. But the benefit comes from the diet pattern, not from a fantasy of purification. There is another point people rarely discuss. Olive oil works best when it becomes invisible. By that, I mean you do not need a dramatic daily shot to get benefits. A drizzle on roasted vegetables, a spoon in a homemade dressing, a replacement for butter in a meal, a finishing touch on beans or fish. These are the habits that repeatedly show up in healthy eating patterns. That is what makes olive oil powerful. It is not flashy, it is repeatable. It is the kind of food choice that can quietly shift a person's whole way of eating over months and years. The body does not need a spectacle, it needs a pattern. If you are someone who loves the idea of an evening ritual, olive oil can still fit, but keep the ritual modest. A small amount is more reasonable than a large shot. And for many people, using it with food is smarter than drinking it straight. That is because food slows things down, blends nutrients together, and usually feels more natural to the digestive system. When you combine olive oil with vegetables, legumes, or a balanced dinner, you are building an actual meal pattern, not just chasing a trend. The body usually rewards meals more reliably than it rewards shortcuts. What happens if you overdo it? For one, the calories can add up quickly. For another, your stomach may complain. For a third, you may start treating a healthy food as if it were a medicine, which can lead to disappointment when the dramatic promises do not come true. Even healthy fats need limits. Major medical sources keep reminding us that all fats are calorie-rich, and the heart-healthy message is to choose them wisely, not recklessly. The most dangerous thing about a health trend is often not the food itself. It is the illusion that the food lets you ignore the rest of your lifestyle. Now think about the people who might benefit the most from olive oil as part of a nightly routine. Not the people looking for a miracle, the people looking for a better habit. The person who tends to snack on processed food late at night. The person who is trying to replace butter-heavy habits. The person who is working on a Mediterranean-style pattern and wants a simple way to stay consistent. For those people, olive oil may be a helpful tool, not because it is dramatic, but because it is practical. Health is often built by practical tools repeated over and over. And what about people who should be cautious? Anyone with a sensitive stomach, anyone who notices reflux or nausea from straight oils, and anyone who already gets enough calories or fat in the day should be careful with the just drink it idea. If a food causes discomfort, it is not automatically right for that person just because somebody on the internet called it healthy. There is also no benefit to forcing a nightly habit that your body clearly dislikes. Healthy eating should feel sustainable, not punitive. A trend that makes you miserable is not a wellness strategy. It is just a chore with better branding. If I had to summarize the science in one plain sentence, I would say this. Olive oil is best understood as a heart-friendly, unsaturated fat that works mainly when it replaces less healthy fats in an overall healthy diet. And there is no special proof that drinking it before bed unlocks some unique overnight transformation. That is the cleanest, most honest version. It is less sensational than the internet version, but it is far more useful. Because once you know the truth, you can use olive oil intelligently instead of superstitiously. So yes, what happens if you drink olive oil every night before bed? In some people, not much beyond adding a bit of healthy fat to the day. In some people, a little satiety or a better late-night routine. In some people, stomach discomfort. Over time, if the olive oil replaces butter, fried snacks, or other saturated fat-heavy habits, then the long-term direction can be helpful for heart health and overall diet quality. But if you are expecting a miracle, you will miss the real lesson. The real lesson is that the humble foods people repeat consistently are often the ones that matter most. And maybe that is the deepest truth here. The body does not need a nightly show. It needs wise inputs. It needs fewer extremes and more good patterns. It needs fats that are kind to the heart, meals that do not overload the system, and habits that can survive real life. Olive oil can absolutely be one of those habits. Just do not turn a healthy food into a legend. Use it for what it is, a valuable part of a healthier way of eating, not a shortcut around it. If you remember only one thing from this video, remember this. Olive oil is useful when it is part of a pattern, not when it is treated like a stunt. Small amounts, consistently used in the context of balanced meals, are where the evidence is strongest. The bedtime part may be convenient, but it is not the reason olive oil matters. The reason it matters is that it helps your diet look more like the kind of diet the body tends to thrive on. And that is a much bigger story than a spoonful at night. So tonight, if you choose olive oil, choose it with wisdom. Choose quality. Choose moderation. Choose consistency. And choose the kind of routine that supports your heart, not just your curiosity. Because in health, the simplest habits are often the most powerful, but only when we stop asking them to do impossible things.